two starving animals on top of a white mattress. They are creating what is called love, and every other person in the building can hear that. In that moment, they need each other to be completed. They are just two hollow organisms that need to morph into one another to feel like they want to live another day, filling each other's voids and nullifying each other's pains. It is two hearts in an empty bed. It is just a bed in an empty room, a room in an empty building, a building in an empty city, and one vacant city in an empty world. In reality, there are really hundreds of thousands of people within a 10-mile radius of them, but they feel secluded and alone, as if untouchable and almost anarchic. The violent desire for one another feels to them like enough power to make the world a better place. But clouded by the pulsating ecstasy in their heads, they can't understand why humanity isn't one big happy family holding hands and singing Kumbaya around a fire. They feel like a glowing, sterile speck hiding in the dirty, damp corner of the world's violent, grotesque butcher kitchen. They hide away and make the love that they couldn't find anywhere else. If only the world could absorb the passion and unity that is being contrived in that empty room. He had so much more to say to her after they were finished. 20 minutes ago, before it started, they were both aware of the fact that they were both just there for a good time. But it had become more than that for him. She was across the room, in the bathroom, fixing her hair and putting her clothes back on. And he realized he loved her. She was absolutely ignorant to his desire to spend the rest of his life with her. He could tell by the casual way she spoke to him and the manner in which she picked up her clothes off the floor that she was ready to just walk out of that door and never see him again. Sweet chemicals of nervousness brought on by this sudden fantasy overwhelmed his thinking, and he remained on the bed, naked and still. He looked at her. She owned his heart and embodied everything that he ever wanted out of life. The fierce emotions that came at him so abruptly that it made a strange anger seethe inside him at the center of his chest. This woman was making him unconsciously jealous of her love. He never needed anything or anyone before, and within the stare he gave her as she stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom, he became timid and almost bashful. She had both of her arms up in her hair as she held a hair clip in between her lips. She turned and gave him a quick glance to see if he was still there, because he was just so quiet, sitting there on the edge of the bed. She smiled and looked back into the mirror. He felt like shrinking away into the wall and disappearing, but he wanted her to know that he loved, that he cared for her deeply. He slid his legs off the side of the bed, but continued looking at her angelic outline and form as she walked back into the bedroom with him. He felt weak, as if she had a power over him that was reaching out and choking his untouchable confidence. In the corner of the room there was a chair where she threw her purse and keys when they first came in. She walked over to the chair and put her purse around her shoulder and held the car keys in her hand. He was vexed and tranced by her swift, womanly movements. He wanted to walk into this room with her all over again from the beginning and remake their love again and again and again. The twinkling of the dangling keys in her hand sounded like the wind chimes that hung from his back porch when he was a child. It made him feel like a boy, first discovering his natural inclination for a woman and the overwhelming ache of love that is possible to feel. Like first experiencing butterflies in your stomach. It is uncomfortable, but like a feel-good medication that is almost obsessive. As the clicking of her shoes went across the floor towards the door, each tap of her heel sounded like and felt like a hammer to his brittle skull. He felt like releasing a guttural scream that would stop her so he could spill out the truth onto her, but he was humiliated by his need. She put her hand on the doorknob. The proverbial knife of love stabbed into his heart and soul, and his ego was being deflated. He looked forward in time into the future of his life, and all he saw was his arms around her, his lips on her, her body on his. Her wrist turned and swung the door open. She stepped outside of it and closed it. Fading steps down a hall, and then silence. "I love you," he said. Alone in an empty room, in an empty building, city and world, left empty-hearted, looking down at his empty hands that he wished she was in. The tough man with his head down, sitting on the edge of a twisted bed, started to tear into his empty hands as his identity was tearing apart. The torment he felt wasn't only for the loss of the woman he needed, but brought on also by the realization that his indestructible self-reliance and immortal ego was just a house of cards.